Today is the exterior reveal of our off-grid 1978 Dodge van camper. We have lots of exterior upgrades to show you, but before we can do that, there's body work that needs to be done, then lots of sanding, priming, more sanding, and painting. I also need to replace the exhaust system. I knew space would be limited inside the van, so early on I wanted some type of cargo tray on the rear of the van. Our plan is to put a small generator for backup power on the cargo tray, and I wanted an extra gas can and potable water can. The problem is, when all of this is on a rear cargo tray, it would be difficult to access the rear doors of the van when we're camping. So I wanted to fabricate a cargo tray that can swivel out of the way without unloading everything. Here's how I did it. Okay, on the back of our Ram Camp van, my plan is to fabricate a one-off bumper with a cargo tray that will swivel out of the way so you can open the rear doors without removing the cargo tray. I found and bought an old cargo tray for $30. My idea was to fabricate a heavy-duty rear bumper and then weld a reinforced piece of pipe that a heavy-duty reinforced pin could go in so the tray can rotate outward. Now we can carry extra equipment and still access the rear of the van. When you have an off-grid four-wheel drive camper van, you need a winch to get you or someone else out of a jam. My plan was to fabricate a front winch support, so I found a used Jeep JK bumper with a winch plate for $100. Then I found a 9,000-pound winch from a wrecked Jeep for $200. I'm still using the original front bumper, so I cut the ends off the JK bumper and welded plates on the ends so it looks more like a bull bar with the winch. I was going to send the van out to have the exhaust done, but I figured it would be less expensive if I did it myself. It originally had a 2-in-1 exhaust system. When I saw there were leaks in the Y pipe at the exhaust manifolds, I decided to convert it to dual exhaust, but do it inexpensively. I bought 2 original exhaust tailpipes for a '78 Dodge and cut and welded sections together and added some old school thrush mufflers. I'm happy with the way it turned out.
We saved a ton of money in labor costs because Mark does all the work himself, and we save on parts too because he finds inexpensive parts and he makes what he needs for the van himself. We spent quite a bit on this build, but we also saved a lot too.
The body on the van was in good shape except for the 2 front fenders and 2 front corners of the roof. I found a van that was being scrapped and cut 4 patch panels to repair the rusted areas. I cut the rust out and welded the patch panels in. After a couple thin coats of Bondo, it looked new again. When I was getting ready to repair the passenger side fender, I realized the patch panel was in an accident at some point and it was useless. This is what causes rust in vehicles. It's amazing how much stuff will get packed up in here, and when it's wet, it just sits there and starts to rust the metal. So we found an old Class C motorhome in a junkyard on a Dodge chassis that had a good fender, and I cut it out and used it to repair the van's passenger fender. I found this hood scoop for the Dodge van and it brought back lots of memories. This is something you would have seen on a 1970s street van back in the day. Actually, I got it for 2 reasons. 60% probably for the old school look that I'm after, and 40% for actual efficiency, because what I can do is I can take a hole saw and drill several holes through the hood underneath the hood scoop. That will allow cold air to get to the engine, which is good for an engine. First, I dry fit the scoop on the hood. Then I cut the excess fiberglass from both sides and beveled the edges so the Bondo would flow into the hood without a hump. This is the finished product. It might not look pretty, but it's going to work a lot better. You can see now I've got hardly any lip or edge to deal with, and that'll blend or flow into the hood really nice. And I ground back further in here so I have a little bit more room to use my fiberglass or Bondo. Then I centered the hood on the scoop, and once I knew the position, I cut some holes in the hood using a hole saw. This makes the hood scoop functional by increasing the airflow to the engine. I put a little fiberglass strand under the edges and used a few small screws to hold it in place. Then I finished it using the least amount of Bondo as possible. Here's the finished product. I didn't like the front grille on the van, so I found an old school Dodge grill for $50 that was used from '71 to '73. I painted it the same color as the van and painted the Dodge emblem in the center of the grill black. I repaired a couple small dents and then the sanding began. I sanded the entire van with 220 grit sandpaper, followed by 320 grit sandpaper. Then I cleaned the van, masked it off, and went over the entire surface with a wax and grease remover. I sprayed 2 coats of primer on the van, sanded it again, and it was finally ready for paint. After the paint cured, I wanted to add some black to the van. I taped the areas off, sanded everything, and masked and cleaned the surface. Then I sprayed it with jet black, followed by clear coat. I liked the black on the bottom of the van, but did not like the upper stripe. So I sanded it again and masked everything off again. Then I added some black to the original Boulder gray paint and sprayed it again. After you paint a vehicle using a base coat and clear coat, you need to do what's referred to as cut and buff. Basically, you're sanding any imperfections in the clear coat. I start the process by wet sanding the van using 600 grit sandpaper, then I do it again using 800 grit sandpaper, followed by a final sanding using 1200 grit sandpaper. It's a lot of work, but the end result's worth it. Then you buff the vehicle, which takes a full day because you start the process using a rubbing compound followed by a polishing compound to get the high gloss finish we're looking for.
Several years ago, I had a small accident with the Jeep JK Wrangler. They needed to replace one of the running boards, but Jeep only sold them in pairs. Mark fabricated the extra running board to work on the van. Now it looks like it was made for the van.
Now I can put everything back together.
I am excited to reveal the interior and exterior of our completed van conversion project. We'll start on the inside. When you open the side door, you see the finished floor, and Mark added an LED light at the step to help when it's dark outside. There is a switch here, or you can turn it on using a small remote. Then you see the fold-down table that covers the area below the sink, and it gives me counter space when I need it. Or I can use it as a table to work at. Next, we have the beautiful quartz countertop with a great sink and faucet setup. You'll also notice that the small farmhouse shelf Mark made. Then you'll see our adventure sign, which we cannot wait for all the new adventures in the van. And the backsplash above the countertop, we have our small microwave and coffee pot. All of this is on the industrial style cabinet frame. We have our industrial storage locker mounted on the wall and our full-size bed at the back. You have access under the bed to get to all the stuff Mark will talk about in a minute. On the opposite side, there is the industrial-style TV cabinet with the farmhouse wood top. We have our 28-inch 12-volt 120-volt TV from RecPro on a mount that conveniently swivels to view from anywhere in the van. The cabinet also houses our Dometic portable toilet for those occasions a bathroom is not available. You can also access it from the outside when it needs to be emptied at the dump station. Up front, we have our new used seats from a Sprinter van. They move forward and backward, and they swivel and they recline. In between the seats, we have our removable farmhouse-style table. We added new carpet and we got the center console cover from the Class C motorhome at the junkyard. Mark repaired and painted the old steering wheel and upgraded the dash and all the controls to a modern-day vehicle. There is a backup camera, functional oil amp and temperature gauges, a USB charger, and 12-volt power outlets. He installed switches for the backup camera, the dash fans, and the radio when we are camping. And there's a digital battery voltage gauge light right here. That is a preview of our van camper interior. Now let's look at the exterior of the van and then the heartbeat of our off-grid conversion project.
The first thing you notice on the exterior is the paint job. My goal with the paint was a clean and classic finish. We used Boulder Gray paint with black highlights and a slightly darker gray middle stripe. I also added some painted on pinstripes to separate the colors. Then we added our Ram Camp logos at the rear of the vans and our Ram Camp 4x4 emblems. I painted the entire hood an old school functional hood scoop black. And here's our old school grille with Dodge highlighted in black in the center. To finish the front, we have our bull bar, our 12-volt winch, and at the rear of the van, we have our functional cargo tray with the generator, a fuel can, and a water can. Below the tray is our high lift jack to help get us out of any jams. Now we can look at the heartbeat of the Ram Camp. We had lots of help on this build, and in no order, I'd like to thank Dometic, Go Power by Dometic, RecPro, Wifco, and Steel Rubber Products. This build started with our two 190-watt solar panels, a charge controller, a 250 amp lithium battery, and a 2,000-watt inverter, all by Go Power. We added a Wifco power center with auto detect technology and a second 2,000-watt inverter. We also have a small generator as a backup electrical system. We have our powered cooler, Penguin air conditioner with heat strip, portable toilet, and portable lithium battery, all by Dometic. For the water system, we installed a RecPro freshwater tank, a 12-volt water pump, gray water holding tank, and an outside shower. We also installed a 12-volt water heater. And to help support the weight over the rear axle, I installed 5,000-pound rear airbags. From start to finish, this 4x4 van conversion project took 5 months. There was a lot done to the van that didn't make it into these 6 episodes. First and foremost, I wanted the van to be safe for travel. When you start with a 40-something-year-old vehicle, there's a lot of mechanical work that needs to be done. Then we got to the fun stuff, making a functional off-grid vehicle that looks good too. It was a fun project, and now we get to use and enjoy our weekend getaway vehicle.
you so much for following us on this adventure. And if you want to learn more about using and maintaining your RV, visit our popular RVOnlinetraining.com site. Happy camping!